The light through the bedroom window had that particular February quality, thin and colorless, like someone had diluted the sun. I stood in the doorway holding two grocery bags, the handles cutting into my palms, and watched my wife fold a cashmere sweater into her leather suitcase, the one we'd bought together in Florence. She didn't look up. The sound of tissue paper crinkling filled the space between us. "I'm leaving tonight," she said, smoothing the sleeves with practiced efficiency. "I've already told Rachel. She agrees with me." I set the bags down carefully. Inside one was the steak I'd planned to cook. Inside the other, the wine I'd spent 20 minutes choosing because I knew she preferred Malbec. My throat felt tight, but I didn't raise my voice. "On Valentine's Day." "Don't be dramatic, Michael." She zipped the suitcase closed. "This has been coming for years. You just never paid attention." I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. My pulse stayed steady and measured, the way it always did when numbers didn't add up on a balance sheet. I'd spent 17 years as a senior auditor. I knew how to read patterns beneath the surface. She had no idea what I'd already done. "My name is Michael Hartwell. I'm 52 years old, and when people asked what I did for a living, their eyes usually glazed over before I finished explaining compliance review systems. It wasn't glamorous, it was thorough, it was methodical. And it had taught me that the truth always leaves a trail if you know where to look. Claire and I had been married for 19 years. On the surface, we looked stable. We had the house in the good school district, even though we never had children. We had the joint checking account and the timeshare in Hilton Head we used every August. We had dinner reservations at Antonio's every Friday night. But I'd started noticing the erosion 3 years ago. Small things. The way she'd interrupt me mid-sentence to take a call from Rachel, her sister. The way she'd roll her eyes when I suggested we review our budget. The way she'd say, "We can't afford that," about my fishing trip, but never question her monthly spa packages. Last year I'd suggested we have a date night without phones. She'd looked at me like I'd asked her to give up breathing. "That's controlling, Michael. Rachel says you have narcissistic tendencies." I let it go. I let a lot go. 2 months ago, I came home early from a canceled meeting. Claire was in the kitchen with Rachel, and they didn't hear me open the garage door. Rachel's voice carried through the house. "Just tell him you want the house. Men like Michael are too passive to fight. He'll sign whatever you put in front of him." Claire laughed. Not a nervous laugh, a comfortable one. "I know. God, I should have done this years ago. But I needed to make sure the mortgage was fully in both names first. Now it is." I stood in the mudroom with my briefcase in my hand. The furnace kicked on. The refrigerator hummed. I set my keys down quietly and walked back to my car. The next morning, I called Daniel Reeves, an attorney I'd worked with on corporate audits. We met at a diner 30 miles outside town. "I need to understand my exposure," I said, "before anything official happens." Daniel stirred his coffee. "What are we talking about?" "Potential divorce. 19 years married. House in both names. Joint accounts. She doesn't work. I need to know what protection I have." He pulled out a legal pad. "When did the marriage start showing problems?" "Recently, but I think the planning started earlier." Over the next 3 weeks, I did what I'd done for Fortune 500 companies. I audited. I pulled bank statements going back 7 years. I found ATM withdrawals in even increments. 200 here, 300 there. Always cash, never explained. I tracked the timeshare payments. I noticed that the account they came from had been quietly switched to one solely in my name last April. I discovered that Claire had opened a credit card using our joint income, but listing only herself as the account holder. 14,000 in charges, handbags, jewelry, weekend trips with Rachel to Charleston. I didn't confront her. I photographed everything. I created a spreadsheet. I forwarded it all to Daniel. "She's building separate credit and bleeding joint assets," he said when we met again. "Classic financial staging." What do? You protect yourself, quietly, before she files first. I filed for legal separation on January 18th. I didn't tell Claire. I had the documents served to me at work, as though she'd initiated it. I wanted the timestamp to show I was the respondent, not the petitioner. Daniel said it would matter later. Then I waited. February 14th arrived with freezing rain. I took the morning off and went to the bank. I opened a new account in my name only and transferred exactly half of our joint savings. Not a dollar more. I left her half untouched. I scheduled automatic deposits from my paycheck to route to the new account starting February 16th. At noon, I got the groceries. Steak, wine, fresh flowers. I knew she was planning something. I could feel it in the way she'd been moving through the house the past week. Distracted, focused on her phone, measuring me with glances when she thought I wasn't looking. When I walked into the bedroom and saw the suitcase, I wasn't surprised. I was prepared. She stood up from the bed and crossed her arms. I've thought about this carefully, Michael. I want you to move out by the end of the month. I'll stay in the house until we figure out the details. The house you want me to leave. It makes sense. You travel for work. I'm settled here. And the mortgage I pay? We'll work it out. She picked up her phone. Rachel's attorney says, Rachel's attorney doesn't represent you yet. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I walked to the closet and pulled out my own suitcase. Not the expensive one, the canvas weekender I'd use for business trips. I set it on the bed and began folding shirts. You're leaving? She sounded genuinely shocked. You said you were leaving tonight. I thought I'd save you the trouble of coming back for anything. That's not. I meant I was going to Rachel's for a few days, to give us space. Space for what? She hesitated. I could see her recalculating. To think about what we both want. I folded another shirt. My hands were steady. I already know what I want. I want honesty. I want a partner who doesn't plan an exit strategy in secret. I want someone who doesn't let their sister draft the ending before they've even told me there's a problem. You're twisting this, am I? I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I set it on the bed between us. That's a bank statement, joint savings. Notice the date, January 12th. Notice the balance. Now notice this one from yesterday. The withdrawals aren't for groceries, Claire. Her face went pale. You're spying on me? It's a joint account. I'm reviewing our finances. Something I've asked to do with you for 3 years and you've called controlling. She grabbed her phone. I'm calling Rachel. Go ahead. Ask her attorney how it looks when one spouse systematically drains assets while planning to leave. Ask her how that plays in equitable distribution. She didn't call. She stood there, phone in hand, staring at me like I was someone she'd never met. I zipped my suitcase closed. I've filed for legal separation. You'll be served on Monday. I've already moved my paycheck deposits to a separate account. I've transferred exactly half of our joint savings to my name, and I left your half untouched. I've documented every shared expense, every withdrawal, every payment for the last 7 years. I have 3 attorneys who've reviewed everything. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. You wanted to leave tonight, I said quietly. So leave. But you don't get to write the story alone anymore. I walked out of the bedroom. I didn't slam the door. I didn't wait for her response. I loaded my suitcase into my car and drove to the extended stay hotel on Route 9, where I'd already reserved a room for the next 30 days. The silence in that hotel room was remarkable. No television, no traffic noise, just the hum of the heating unit and the sound of my own breathing. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. I had 17 new emails. 14 were work. 3 were from Daniel. The first one was a calendar invite. Initial hearing, family court, March 2nd. The second was a PDF attachment. Financial disclosure worksheet, please review. The third was one line. She's going to panic when she's served. Don't respond to anything emotional. Only communicate through me. I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. Over the next 10 days, the calls started. First from Claire directly. I didn't answer. Then from Rachel. I didn't answer. Then texts, dozens of them. We need to talk about this like adults. You're being vindictive. I never said I wanted a divorce. Rachel says you're trying to manipulate me. I screenshot every message. I forwarded them to Daniel. I didn't reply to a single one. On February 23rd, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered. Mr. Hartwell, this is Jennifer Marks. I'm representing your wife in the separation proceedings. Everything should go through my attorney, Daniel Reeves. I understand. I'm calling as a courtesy. My client would like to pursue mediation before this becomes adversarial. It became adversarial when she planned to take the house without telling me she wanted a separation. There was a pause. She's indicated she's willing to negotiate. Then she can submit a proposal through proper channels. I checked the time. 4:02 p.m. Mr. Hartwell, I think if we could all just sit down. Ms. Marks, with respect, your client had months to sit down with me. She chose to sit down with you first. We'll proceed accordingly. I hung up. That night, Daniel called. You're doing great. Don't break now. I'm not breaking. She's scared. Her attorney knows the optics are bad. Separate credit cards, cash withdrawals, asset staging while you're still living together as a married couple. Plus, you filed first, even though you made it look reactive. Judge is going to notice you were protecting yourself, not attacking. What happens next? We go to the initial hearing. We present your financials. We show the pattern. We let her attorney explain why their client was building an exit while telling you everything was fine. The hearing was in a windowless room that smelled like floor polish in old paper. Claire sat across from me with Jennifer Marks. She dressed carefully, the blue suit she wore to weddings, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back. She looked smaller than I remembered. The magistrate reviewed both financial disclosures. I'd submitted mine a week early. Claire's had arrived the day before, and I could tell from Jennifer's tight expression that it had been a scramble. Mrs. Hartwell, the magistrate said, I'm looking at some discrepancies here. You've listed the marital home as your primary residence, but you've also listed a separate credit account with $14,000 in charges that your spouse was apparently unaware of? Jennifer leaned forward. Your Honor, my client maintains some financial independence, which is... Financial independence is having your own income, counselor. This looks like concealed debt on a joint income stream. Claire's hands were folded on the table. I could see her knuckles were white. The magistrate looked at me. Mr. Hartwell, you've listed the home as jointly owned, but you're indicating you moved out on February 14th. Can you explain? My wife told me she was leaving that evening. I chose to leave instead to avoid further conflict. I've maintained all mortgage and utility payments from my separate account since then. And you transferred funds from the joint savings on the same day? Exactly half, Your Honor. I left her half untouched. I can provide transaction records showing I moved my portion only after she indicated the marriage was ending. The magistrate made a note. This is unusual timing. Daniel spoke for the first time. Your Honor, my client had reason to believe financial planning was occurring without his knowledge. He acted to protect his share of marital assets, not to deprive his spouse of hers. Jennifer tried to recover. Your Honor, this whole narrative is... The magistrate held up a hand. I'm ordering both parties to maintain financial status quo. No large purchases, no asset transfers, no closing of accounts. We'll reconvene in 45 days for mediation. You're both going to come to this with good faith proposals. Am I clear? We both said yes. Outside the courthouse, Claire tried to approach me. Jennifer put a hand on her arm, but Claire shook it off. Michael, please, can we just talk for 5 minutes? I kept walking toward my car. I never wanted it to be like this, she called after me. Her voice cracked. I was scared. Rachel convinced me you'd fight me for everything, and I panicked. I know I handled it wrong. I stopped. I didn't turn around. You weren't scared of me fighting you, I said. You were scared of me noticing. There's a difference. I got in my car and drove away. 3 weeks later, we reached a settlement. Claire kept the house but refinanced the mortgage in her name only. I kept my retirement accounts in the timeshare, which I immediately sold. We split the remaining joint assets 50-50. No alimony, no ongoing obligations. I signed the papers in Daniel's office on a Thursday afternoon. The room smelled like coffee and leather. Outside, it had started to rain. "You okay?" Daniel asked. "I'm okay. You did the right thing. You protected yourself without becoming the villain." I nodded. But I wasn't sure I'd avoided villain status. I just avoided being the victim. The next morning, I woke up in my new apartment, a one-bedroom in a complex near the river. The sun was coming through the blinds in clean, straight lines. I made coffee in the cheap machine I'd bought at Target. I sat at my small kitchen table and listened to the silence. It wasn't empty silence. It was clear silence. I thought about the moment in the bedroom, the suitcase on the bed, the way Claire had looked at me when I set down those bank statements. I thought about the version of myself who would have signed whatever she asked, who would have moved out quietly, who would have let Rachel's attorney write the ending. That version felt like someone I used to know. Silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's preparation. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt unburdened. Like I'd been carrying a suitcase full of someone else's expectations for 19 years, and I'd finally set it down. If you'd been in my place that Valentine's Day, would you have confronted her immediately? Or would you have waited and prepared like I did? Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Whether you're driving to work in Ohio, or walking your dog in Oregon, or sitting in your kitchen in Texas, your presence here means more than you know. If stories like this matter to you, stories about men who chose clarity over chaos, preparation over panic, subscribe. Let's keep walking this road together.